Howdy everyone, I'm Roarar. Today I want to talk about my oldest human OC, Kay Exess. She's a bit of a doozy. I say she's my oldest human OC, but honestly she could very well be my oldest OC in general, besides my Sonic characters. See, years before I discovered the true wonders of the internet, a friend of mine on the forum that would later call my internet home created this fun parody of Star Wars story, and like it was the forum inside joke basically, but it was also the inside adventure. It was kind of like a crack fic that became the lifeblood of the forum. I joined a couple years after it was made. I think it was 2009. I think it was early 2009 or something. And I got into reading that little story. What of it I could bear to read. Because some of it for me was a little hard to follow. But as I got older, I'm now like reading it. I was on the forum for about a couple months. I think enough for everyone to start calling me regular. And the organizers of the story, when they realized that I was on regularly, it was almost like an initiation in which they said, okay, you can be part of this. You just need a character. And almost all of the characters, every single one of them in the story were self-insert. So don't blame me that I made a self-insert. She's definitely grown to be her own different person. I'll get to that a little bit later. Yeah, when I got this message saying, hey, you can have a character in this story, I made one quickly as possible. I gave them the name Kay Exess, with just the letters K, X, and S. This was actually pretty normal. It was an abbreviation of my username, Phone Shut Up. It was an abbreviation of my username, Noxania. You can probably see why never mind. It was pretty normal, like I said, for the characters in these stories to have these little abbreviations. There were quite a few like this. But yeah, she, of course, like all of them, started out as a self-insert, but she's grown to a totally different person. She's taken a totally different path than I did. And when she started out to be this southern girl with little to no personality who just happened to end up being this amazing world with parodies galore, she kind of just, like, she grew into this beautiful pansexual cowgirl with spunk and intelligence and brawn and confidence. She's quick to judge, but quick to forgive. She's protective and irrational, but she's kind and loyal. She's tough. She's buff. I don't have a drawing of how I drew her back then. I don't think. I can look around, and if I do find one, I'll put it up. If I don't, I won't, or maybe I'll just be too lazy and I'll forget. She definitely had a very different outfit than she does today. Not totally different, it was just a t-shirt. And she didn't have the hat, but to this day, she has the hat and the bandana. She used to be more like, she used to prefer red, but I've noticed that she's been starting to prefer green, and I'll probably get to that in a second. The little backstory I had down for her was that she used to live with a very strict and paranoid mother and her daredevil sister. After seeing the floating island that all the cool heroes resided in, she desired to fit in. Because, like, she had these powers that she couldn't, like, explain. But when she heard about Rapid Island, the big floating island that orbited the planet, she was desperate to become part of that. And she sought to make it out there by herself, 14 years old. And because she was a tinkerer and an inventor, she was able to make a flying bike. And was able to make it up that way. When she arrived after a bit of a crash, she eventually ran into a guy named Avenger, yes, Avenger, who is going to be her sensei, so to speak. And he trained her in the art of this martial art that the heroes used, but she ended up having totally different powers than they did. I mean, they were similar, but not by much. I'm not going to go into too much into detail because a lot of it is inside jokes and it's going to sound incredibly ridiculous. She ended up living in a laboratory that was run by one of the villains. He also has some clones that he made of the superheroes, and another person that was also the same abilities lived there. So we had Avenger, Professor Spork, Tin Man, and then the clones Jimmy and Hammer. She befriended these guys and absolutely loved living here. I don't want to go into a whole shit ton of detail here, but eventually some huge went shit down after a few years of her living with these boys. Like, I think, like, the professor went mad, he went, like, real evil, and she and the others of the squad that, like, used these powers moved out of the lab and into their specific temple. She spent the next few years training herself because her sensei fell into a coma because of that shitstorm. And she ended up with a secret love affair with Jimmy, who was still with the professor because, you know, he wasn't one of the Custer group, he was a clone. But, you know, I guess that's all, like, a little rambly there. But after a few years, or maybe I think it was 1 or 2, she ended up becoming a knight, instead of a trainee like she was before. She's tough in her own regard. She and Jimmy had a healthier and more open relationship, and a lot of stuff went down, and it would take y'all reading all of it, and I don't know if I'm in the position to share it, because it is such an inside joke, and it's very close to me. Well, her powers, I'll get into that, were that of these folk. She had a lightsaber-like weapon that was actually made of superheated sugar, an innate ability to build anything, and some telekinesis. Like, she could lift some things with it, but not a lot. Like, it depends on the weight. And some of it she had to use her arms and her telekinesis at the same time, which could lead to some pretty funny stuff. She has a very rare power related to this as well that harnesses the stars themselves and gives her the ability to see into the future. She is a prophetess, but she doesn't really like to use that title. Like, because someone had used her prophetic powers against her once. And she ended up not being so open about that ability, especially since she ended up getting older, and when she was young, this thing excited her. She wanted to see more of the future. She wanted to understand this ability. But one day it was used against her, and since then she hasn't been super hyped about it. Since then she's been a lot more cautious about that ability of hers, and it'll pop up randomly, and it could disorient her, and she hasn't found the ability to use it in a fight yet. And that has troubled her. And as much as she would like to be able to use it to predict a fight, she hasn't really gotten that down because now she's afraid of it. She has a couple weapons. Like I mentioned, she had the lightsaber. She also has a fancy little flashlight that can shoot electricity. She calls it her rod of lightning. No, she was 14 when she named it. I was 14 when I named it. She tinkered so much with her weapons that the two ended up becoming compatible. She decided, hey, I can actually plug this thing into my saber and make it do something funny. And she turned it into she could plug them together and turn it into a lightning whip. I think Zero Suit Samus in Smash Bros. Uses this. It's a fun little thing to play with. this drawing here actually shows her with it. She's also pretty good at close combat. She's done a lot of physical training, like probably a little more than most of the custard folks have. But still, her physical power doesn't have anything on the other hero group. They have a lot more physical power than she does. On a slightly different note, I've actually been doing some brainstorming to get her in her own little universe, set in the Wild West, in which there is a small population of werewolves. Like, I've roleplayed with her as a werewolf before. I've had near dream ideas of a cowboy werewolf, and I feel like this could go somewhere, but right now it's just a little bitty brain fart, trying to become an idea, and it's still formulating. Like, if I feel like it has to go somewhere, I'll try to make it go somewhere. I still have this other webcomic I gotta do, so we'll see where everything goes. Like, that's just how things are. It's just, sometimes you get an idea and it's like, I want to see this happen, but I don't know what I'm doing. But y'all, I've got to thank my friends on that forum for her development as a character, because without them, she'd still be this lame little self-insert with a lightning stick. I love her to death. I love them to bits. And because of them, Kay means so much to me. She's probably one of my coolest, most developed characters. And yeah, I don't think I've ever felt more connected with a character other than my persona. But I guess I don't really have much else to say about her, so with that, I'm going to wrap this video up with some plugs. My commissions are still open. I have the link to the prices in the description. If you want to check that out, get a little commission. Maybe I'll do a speed paint. I'm likely going to do a speed paint. I also have my Patreon. Supporting me will give you commission discounts and sneak peeks. I have said this before. And you'll even get a special role on my Discord server, which you can join even if you're not a patron. But if you are a patron, you get a special role with a special channel. There's a couple, but one of them's for the really high payers. And with that, that'll be it. I will see you all later. Bye-bye.